There you go. Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved immortal beings, and good-looking people. Maybe you're good-looking. Joe is looking for and finding the good. You found good in abundance because you tuned in consciously and conscientiously to Marriage with Joy. Notice I didn't say marriage with joy. Marriage with joy, because that's the kind of exuberance, enthusiasm happens when people are together in what we'll call, for want of a better term, holy matrimony. Now, you can spell holy, by the way, both ways. I just realized you can spell it H-O-L-Y, which is what most people think. And you can also spell it W-H-O-L-L-Y, which is holy matrimony. When you're in a holy beneficial relationship, then that is how joy is expressed and how it's felt and how it's shared with every member of the family, whether you're blessed to have children or not, grandchildren, extended family. The genius of marriage that is rooted in the fundamentals of joy brings about the best in people, because that's the way to live successfully. How do I know? The Bible tells me so. That's an old song. No. Okay, you have to go and do a Google on that. Have faith, hope, and charity. That's the way to live successfully. How do I know? The Bible tells me so. Can you imagine? Nice Jewish guy singing that song they used to sing in church every Sunday and such like that. And I learned it on community auditions. Which was a sign. No, Maura, you weren't living in Boston at the time. Community Auditions was a local TV show where you had local talent doing what I think it's a very famous show in America called I've Got Talent, something like that. Very sophisticated with judges, but if you go back 70 years, really, I was watching when I was 6 years old, 7, 8, 9. You go back 70 years, it was just people playing instruments and harmonica and sounding very tinny, because that's the way television was in those days. Okay, why am I talking about this? I have no idea. However, I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of a flavor of what we're about. I'm going to announce a couple of things for housekeeping purposes, because it's really of import. Number one, and truly number one, is a big round of applause, a hearty hello from tens of thousands of people all over the world for Diane and Michael Medved on the 40th wedding anniversary. Woo! I mean, think about it. 10 years in America today is considered something. 20 years is already, is that possible? 30 years, no, that doesn't happen. 40 years, and growing stronger by the week, the month, the year. And I said, we're applauding because we're applauding for ourselves, Diane. You hear that? Yeah. As much as it is for you and Michael and the family, extended family, et cetera, so now grandchildren, and et cetera. And I am deeply touched to say these words. I was there. I was there at your wedding, which is also kind of amazing. That's a 40-year friendship or more. Right. Which in any kind of world is really something special. So a big round of applause again from our hearts to you.
Yes.
Okay, kids. Yeah. It makes a difference in what we do. This is not another panel discussion of people weighing in on a subject. This is really intimacy in the sense that human beings really from their heart, because we're going to have some controversy, hopefully in a few minutes when I play something. All right, so that's number one. Number two, not number one, number two, but another interesting piece is that Maura and Jimmy went to visit your daughter. Daughter's name again is?
Kaylee. And it was only me and Kaylee. It was just the two of us.
Oh, Jimmy stayed home and you sent the brother-in-law away. Okay. That's even better. Okay. And as Maura goes from Florida to Maine in the middle of winter, which of course everybody does, Then she goes up there, and in addition to experiencing being with her daughter in the new home and things like that, it was so powerful, the reverberations from the two of them, that it caused an earthquake in Maine, literally. And I think it was a 4.5 or something, a fairly large magnitude. And so we're happy that Maura's back and safe and such. But to be able to experience an earthquake in Maine is very unusual. Maybe it's once a century. I don't know. And Lori is living in Southern California, thankfully distant from the fires. However, I will make the statement that I think if you walk down to the beach from your house, Lori, you were able to see north enough that you could have seen either the smoke, the fire, or maybe even smelled some of it. Is that possible?
We saw the fire several different days, brewing in different spots. We could see it from our backyard. I'm kind of on a little hill. We're about 12 miles from the Palisades. And now my entire high school, where my son goes, he's graduating this year. He's a senior. He just got 150 extra students in his class. Yeah.
Okay, so now look at this. Everybody's directly touched by something.
Mm-hmm. I know so many people who have lost their home, or who know people who've lost their home, or who've been misplaced by it. I just had a lady stay with me. She left today. She was here for 4 days. And her son's school closed. So she was trying to get into our school. They couldn't get in because there's no more room. So she had to try something else, and she might go to online school. So it's really sad. Like, you don't think like it's over, the fire's over, it's off the news, but the devastation for all these people is going to last forever. I did interview, not to change the subject, but I want to add this. I interviewed a man just for the paper I write for this last week. He grew up in Altadena. They had 4 homes that they lived in over the years, from 18 to 0 to 18, 4 homes. Every single one of those homes is gone. Plus the 2 places he had jobs in Altadena, plus his mother's house. All gone.
To add a bit of woe to what you just said, because now you're bringing it very personal and close, is that even the homes that were not ruined completely, and I know of one instance in particular of somebody that I'm fairly close with, his house was not touched seemingly by the fire. All around, houses were burned. His house not. However, as he mentioned, he was only able to go back to the house. I think it was today's Thursday. So he was able to go back to the house on Tuesday. He wasn't able to go for 2 weeks or so. You can't live in it because of the smoke, the ash, the poisons that are all around it. So even if he were able to bring his family back, he can't. And if he's going to even think of doing that and somehow mitigating all of those poisons and such, you're going to be in a construction zone for the next 2-3 years. So it's an ongoing difficulty, and without pointing fingers and yet making sure that people understand, much of it, not all, certainly, much of it is preventable because of things that could have been done and should have been done. Now, it's easy to say in retrospect, coulda, shoulda, woulda. However, the reality of fighting fires in a fire zone is that one understands there are certain things that you do to mitigate. Things were not done. And it's really a pity because you're talking about some of the most expensive real estate in the world. And not just the foundational real estate, the real estate of people, like you mentioned, Lori. It's people live in people's lives, businesses, families, and to have that all happen in the course of, let's say, somewhere between 24 and 72 hours, it boggles the mind. And only because you touched it, and now, like you said, your son's high school has 250 additional students.
150, yeah.
Which you can't do. Well, okay, physically people can stand, but you need seats, you need things, you need your book, all the things that we live with. And again, we live in the most advanced, the most wealthy, the most concerned place on the planet. And still in all, it happened, right? It's not a war zone, and yet it became a war zone. So one never knows in life, which is, again, now let's come back to our particular podcast. And as you see in the corner, we urge everybody, and thank God we have thousands of people listening. We urge you, share this with 5 people. You want to share with 50 or 100, we love that too, but at least 5 so we can touch at least 100,000 people around the world. Follow us on Spotify and Apple, and just really enjoy the show for what it is, because people enjoy it, because we're dealing with human beings. These are wonderful human beings, each coming from another perspective on marriage, life, and the process that we're all going through, which is living life to the full. That's really what we want. Each one of us wants to live our lives to the full, and we want everybody else to be able to do that. We want joy, happiness, peace, and love to reign supreme in the world. And the best way I think that we can advocate for that is the way we do it, which is speaking openly on an issue or a subject. So today, to create some controversy and maybe ruffle some feathers, even though you can't see the feathers in these wonderful, fine women, I'm going to play a little clip. It's apparently 35 seconds long, and it brings out an idea that I sent out and got challenged on, which is what we love. So I'm going to play it for everybody, and then we'll discuss it and see what we can do with it. Is everybody ready?
Ready.
Okay, here we come. 1, 2, 3, go.
What men want, we don't even want to talk about. It's too embarrassing. But what do men need in a good marriage? What will it take to have a good marriage for the man? What it would take is knowing that the life he is presenting to his wife is appreciated. The man creates a lifestyle, and if the wife appreciates it and actually supports him in it, his life is made. He gave a life to his wife, to his children, to his family, and they received it graciously and appreciate it, which means they're supporting him in it. That's what a man needs most.
Okay, so those of you who were able to see it, not just hear it, if you're able to see it, you saw a very bearded man, old bearded man probably. He's not 30, he's not 40, he's probably somewhere around my age, 60, 70. Long white beard, and he is Jewish. He didn't say anything about Jews. He mentioned about family, about what a man needs. He didn't say wants, because he said, let's forget about that. But what a man needs. So I sent it out, somewhat expecting everybody to say, wow, that was great, let's talk about it. And at least one person said, oh, I want to challenge you on that. So we're not going to say who it is. This is Magic Squares. Well, however, we always begin with wonderful Dr. Diane Medved, up in the great northwest of this country in Mercer Island. So if you'd be so kind, Dr. Diane, what is it that you found so interesting and affirming in the video, or not?
Well, first of all, I think we should say who that was. It was Rabbi Manis Friedman, right? Is that correct?
I'm sorry, he was what?
It was Rabbi Manis Friedman?
Yes, his name is Rabbi. That's not his first name. He is a rabbi. That's his title. His name is Manis Friedman, M-A-N-I-S, Friedman, F-R-I-E-D-M-A-N. For those of you who want to look him up, because he is prolific, he's insightful, he's interesting, and he's also insightful. So you can spell it 2 different ways.
Okay, so I also think on this, he's wrong. And I'm the one. The reason is because I don't think a man presents a lifestyle to a woman. Okay, if the question is, what do men want? Then the question also in a marriage is, what do men and women want? And I say they both want the same thing, which is respect and appreciation, mainly. And perhaps in different proportions, and certainly with different individuals in different proportions. But respect and appreciation are the basics. Now, what I really objected to was the idea that a man presents a lifestyle to his wife, and her job is, sorry, I hate to sound—
to receive it.
Not just to receive it graciously.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
And to take it in and to fawn on all over him. I mean, that's what it was sounding like to me. Now, maybe I misunderstood. However, it isn't a man that presents to the woman. The man is who he is. The woman is who she is. And they look at each other and accept them for who they are, and are going to be, I hope, the helpmeet opposite them, the person who will be able to tell them when they're wrong, when they need that, and certainly, most of all, tell them when they're right, when they deserve that, which I assume would be every day. And that it is not a presentation of a life, it's a creation of a life together. A man and a woman choose the life that they together want to make, and then they may present that to their children, because the children don't have much choice, and the children are born into it, and then children often must adapt to a life that's not quite perfect, or far from it, unfortunately. But the point in a marriage, in a good marriage, you don't advise people that the man has to, first of all, it's too much responsibility for the man. Why should he have to be the one to create and present the life? Okay, so you know where I stand. I believe it's two people who both deserve respect and appreciation, and that they both create a life that together they then try to forge, and maybe need to correct, and maybe need to change, and maybe every single day want to evaluate, because nothing's written in stone until it's already happened. So I think, unfortunately, that he is giving men too much pressure and making women into submissive responders, rather than taking advantage of their own powers to create a life with a spouse. Okay.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm really personally very touched and happy that when I sent out the clip that we got responses from everybody. And it wasn't just, okay, that's nice. There were responses. It was great. I want to mention that when I saw this, again, I'm giving the man's perspective because I am. It's interesting. Maybe we'll have another discussion about it. Can a man give a woman's perspective on something? I don't know. I'm married long enough to think maybe I could give my wife's perspective. I don't know if I can give a woman's perspective. However, I will say that from the point of view of what you mentioned, Diane, I don't think personally that Rabbi Manis Friedman meant to exclude one to the other. Again, that's my personal feeling. The other is that you're right. The respect and appreciation of the two watchwords, as they were, and in a relationship, in a marriage, certainly in a marriage relationship. I will say, as a man, that being appreciated by my wife is far more important to me, at least the time we've been married, 47 years, than my wife's response when I tell her how much I appreciate her. For want of a better term, I'll say it like this. My ego is a little more fragile than hers.
I nearly said that men need mostly respect and women need mostly appreciation, but they're so interchangeable. And at different phases of life, there may be different needs to give one or the other, or to interface them. And so, I mean, in your case, you know, I happen to know that Naomi is a wonderful giver, and she's got a heart of gold. And you, I'm sure you're aware, you're very fortunate to have her. And the fact that you need more appreciation than she does doesn't really surprise me, but you're both fabulous. And that's the way it should be, that you both feel that you're the luckiest people in the world.
Thank you. So fair enough. Wonderful, Maura. You saw the clip once. Now we played it again. You had a different, well, I won't say. What is your impression?
I would say mixed, and I'll open it up by saying this. You've all known me long enough. I always look for elements that unite, bring people together, and uplift them. So I will tell you some of the good things I was hearing from the rabbi. And in many ways, they would hit the mark as to what would be more of a traditional marriage. And I'm talking about traditional, biblical. In fact, earlier today, I was reading, Ruth chapter 4, when she went to Boaz, who's going to be the kinsman redeemer. Now, let me just tell you what struck me. I wasn't thinking about looking at it in terms of today's conversation. But that would be more of a traditional sense where the woman relies completely and totally upon a man. I know from my own experience with my own husband, he loves to be appreciated. He loves it. He needs it a lot more than I do. Um, it must be what a man likes. And maybe when the rabbi was saying it, that he wants to present a life that the wife and children can appreciate and be so glad about. The part that kind of got me a little bit, that works in an ideal situation when you have a man who can be a provider, but who does not look to take that role and use it in such a way as to overstep where he lives and what his bounds are. I'll tell you this from my background. I grew up right outside of New York City. And I will tell you, when my husband and I got married, number one, I didn't want to get married until I met Jimmy. And then I thought, this is the guy I would love to be together with. When we first got married, and he reminds me of this, I used to say to him, don't you ever refer to me as your wife, because I didn't want to be someone else's chattel. I didn't want to go from being a dependent as a child in my parents' house to suddenly being a dependent of my husband. So I tell you that in an ideal situation, with two people that are mature, that respect each other, you can get a husband that loves to be a provider and be the head, or let me say it this way, the man of the house. I think every man loves it. And I was reminded of something else yesterday. I don't know what I was doing. There's a gentleman I know out of Chicago. He's 60, incredibly handsome black man. We know him through basketball. And something he said to me when we were in Mexico to get all of us last year over breakfast, he said, you know what I'm really looking for? He said, Maura, I look at you and Jimmy and I think, I want to be somebody's hero. And he said, I know when you look at Jimmy, you look at him and he's like your hero. You don't say it, but he feels like he's your hero. He said, I have been around so many women that look, because they need to be strong, to put me down. He said, that just so deflates me.
Oh,
Back to this whole thing, the model of what this rabbi is saying. If you get a man that loves to create a provisioning and a protection, a covering, the masculine force for the wife and the home, that is really a beautiful thing. It empowers the man. It helps a man be a man. And we've so eroded it in our culture. The flip side of it is that there's also got to be a place where women are allowed to be a co-equal partner, where their intelligence, their contributions, their giftings, and all these other things help make the marriage whole, and it's not lopsided. So there you go. Is that a long exclamation?
that was very nice. Let's use it.
It's got to be the perfect combination.
So let's use it. Your last phrase: make the marriage whole. So again, there's two ways to spell whole: HOLE, where something falls in, or WHOLE, where it becomes a foundational place with people. Now, I love this word hero. More and more, I'm hearing it from a number of places when I do my either in person or my podcast or my webinars and such. And there's a very famous book out by his name is Mr. Campbell called The Hero's Journey. So if you're familiar with that, you'll know the story. And he said everybody goes through in life the hero's journey. He names the 5 different stages of something happens and not doing anything about it, and then realizing you have to. And again, it's the Lord of the Rings. It's biblical. It's always that. So when I'm hearing from you about this wonderful man, like you mentioned handsome. I didn't say it because I don't know him. Handsome, yes. Well, and yet not happily married, because for good or ill, the women that he's meeting have a need to show their masculine side. Look what I've accomplished. And maybe it may have to do with the Black community. In other words, women in the Black community feel that they have to be even more empowered because they don't find enough men in the Black community that are good looking, accomplished, et cetera, et cetera. But whatever it is, the point is that here's a man who wants to be a hero to a woman and a family, and he's not getting that. The A word is so important. So it can either be the A word, meaning you're an a-hole, or you're an A word, you're an APP. I appreciate you. For a man to feel appreciated it is an ego boost. And every man, I'm sure, let's be blunt, like you said, Diane, every person, of course, needs it as well. Men need that when they go out the door in the morning, or whether they're going out to school for education, they're going to work, whatever they're doing, even if they go out together, man's going his work and the woman's going to hers. The man needs to know that he's the one who's really, hey, this is my family. Not that you're my wife, like you said. That was very interesting, Maura. I don't want you to do this is my wife.
I was a little strong.
Yeah, on the with a little leash and such, in distinction from my wife, as you mentioned many times, wonderful Diane. It's in the biblical sense of the Asa Kenegdo, your helpmate. There is no such thing as a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, that are not co-equal partners. It just doesn't exist in the true biblical sense. Now, fine, men have a certain role, women have a certain role in particular areas. Women more nurturing when it comes to children, men more maybe disciplining when it comes to children. Let's leave that aside. The key is raising children or raising each other in a spirit of love, appreciation, etc., mutual respect. So thank you for that. So wonderful, Lori, because you have a unique situation in that you're dealing with, because Lori is known as the wife expert. She's been through stuff. We want to tell her story every time. She's been through stuff on her own level, and she has used that struggle to reunite her family and now enable others to find peace in their struggle, because she's dealing with a lot of women, mostly women, that are either contemplating or going through divorce, which breaks the home as much as a fire does. I mean, we talked about devastation and such, right? A fire comes rampaging through a neighborhood and such and devastates. Well, unfortunately, a divorce is not much different, is it? It leaves things in a shambles, doesn't it?
Yep.
So
And you know
what did you think about the rabbi's presentation?
Well, so it's very interesting because I can see how Diane had that feeling. And then I loved hearing Maura talk about the hero. And all of that rings true. So I've got several things I need to say. The first part is, when I talk to a wife, I am looking for someone in her life who can be rabbi to her husband. Because if her husband, who's walking out the door having an affair with Susie, had a guy like Rabbi in his circle, he wouldn't be doing what he's doing. And there's not enough men on this planet who talk like that. Now, we as humans can listen to someone like that and choose to agree or disagree. But if we don't have them around, so we're not even being exposed to even being able to agree or disagree. It's just not there. So I believe when you get married, so the joke is, when women marry, they want to change their husband. And when men marry, they never want their wife to change. And so what the rabbi was saying, in my opinion, was when he gets married to his wife, he's saying, this is who I am. This is what your life is going to look like. I may be a plumber. I'm never going to be a CEO of a company. You might want me to be. That ain't in my ballpark. And I'll humor you to make you happy, but this is who I am. Believe me. So he's presenting who he is. So this is the world she's entering. And a lot of women go, okay, I'm good. But then they go, oh, Sammy over there is making a lot of money. Honey, you need to do this too. And he's like, but I presented what I want. Here it was. And you were okay with that. And now you want me to change. That's not what I signed up for. So that's really what I took him for. So I believe this is all about accepting the man for who he is. I think today men, because most of them are being raised by women without fathers, there's this thing called the pussification of a man, where he's becoming more like a woman, and there is no man standing around, especially in the African American communities, a little bit more so, because men just wander and there's nobody above them saying, get back to your family. What are you doing? People are going to follow you. So I don't like that. But what was I going to say? I do believe, so like in my family, right? I married my husband. What did he tell me? We got married and he said, I had a say in my oath that whenever a Penn State football game was on, I would let him watch it. And if it was traveling, I would let him go, or I would go too. And that was good for a few years, but then I would get cranky about it because it overtook our life. And everything that was like first, that almost replaced God. And it was, but he told me this when I got married to him, and I wanted to scoot it out. I figured over time he'd get rid of it. And now, it's been what, 20, almost 30 years. And he still likes the games, but he's not as dedicated. So it happened on his own. But I saw him present something and I was like, no. And that caused a lot of problems. And so I believe what the rabbi says is true. But again, someone could listen to it and go, no, I don't believe that. I want it this way. Okay. But I do believe there's a man and there's a female, male and female. And there can never be two males. There can never be two females. It has to be that give and take. And if someone wants to be bossy and say, this is what I want, the woman gets to go, no, or yes. And then she accepts it. And if she says yes, here comes the ride. Then be quiet and enjoy it.
So I want to respond to something you said because I think it's very incisive. Rabbi, the English word rabbi means teacher. The English word that we use in today's environment is mentor, a mentor or a coach. And too many men do not have a rabbi, a mentor, a coach. Now, I will tell you, Diane will back me up on this, that in our world, the Jewish observant world, each one of us does have a rabbi, a mentor that we present questions to and ask about and engage with. We're not sort of on our own. We use our minds, obviously. We have somebody to speak with that can give us some guidance that we can present something to in a particular situation, be it marriage, children, occupation, etc., and get a unfiltered, right between your eyes type of response. Now, Michael had this for many years with Rabbi Daniel Lappin, and it's wonderful. It helps mold, and it does what you said, wonderful Lori, about how each one has their own idea. The man doesn't want the woman to change, the woman wants the man to change, and how voila, they both are living a lie in a way. Comes along the ability to have, let's say, the man have a teacher, a guide, somebody they can speak with, even a good friend, by the way. That can oftentimes be, for Jimmy, it might be somebody who plays basketball, a basketball coach. It's interesting because in sports, men are not opposed to, let's say, playing on a team sport, whatever it be, and having a coach say, hey, sure, you need to be more careful of how you tackle or play. I used to be wrestling and certain moves and things like that. You don't mind hearing that because you want to get better. When it comes to marriage, sort of like, you can't tell me what to do. Well, the good news is that you want somebody to tell you what to do. Too often, we don't appreciate that somebody is there that I can ask a question to. So I think, Laura, you bring out a wonderful idea. The idea of for a man, especially in today's environment, to have a rabbi, a mentor, a coach, someone that you can reach out to. Look, we have it in the 12-step program, right? Yeah. I mean, everybody knows about the 12-step program, correct? And it cuts across all kinds of addictions. And in today's world, there are many different addictions. So the two fundamental parts to the 12-step program. Number one is, this is very important if you've never heard this before, and because we have a lot of listeners who may not know this. The first step, all steps are not equal. The first step in the 12-step program brings you halfway to the goal. That's how big the first step is. The first step, admitting that you're powerless and you're doing things incorrectly and you're here to learn, that takes you halfway to the goal. Now, each step after that is like climbing Mount Everest. It's rare oxygen and needed, et cetera, et cetera. However, that first is big. The second thing is you don't have the power. Someone else can help you, whether it's a coach, a mentor, the rule book, whatever it is, it's beyond you. For a man to admit that is at one and the same time, the most humbling aspect of life and the most uplifting. Because when you can begin to hear from somebody else, now you can grow. And I'll go back to what you said in the beginning, Diane, about mutual respect and appreciation. As I said, from a personal point of view, I think I personally need to hear from my wife. Actually, take away the word need. I want to hear from my wife as much as I can. And hey, that was good. I like that. Thank you. Anything. I mean, it could be tiny as something. And my head will go, wow, look how big I can barely fit through the doorway. That kind of encouragement is so wonderful. And I believe it's a necessary ingredient that's missing from most marriages today. I mean, certainly most unsuccessful marriages, let's be blunt. Successful marriages, almost by definition, have that as the ingredient. When you're making a cake or something like that, you put in vanilla extract. If you put in just a little bit, it makes the thing taste wonderful. You put in too much, so it's that fine ability to make sure that there is this not just mutual respect and mutual appreciation, but to have somebody outside of me that can help me become a better me. And men need that. You hear that, Lori? Men need that, and they don't have it oftentimes. And if you coaching your lady friends and such, if you ask them, does your husband have somebody that he talks to? Most of the time, they'll probably say no, or they do.
None of them do. And in the moments when they want to leave, if they're everyone doesn't want to, no one wants to participate. Oh, it's none of my business. I don't want to get involved. I'm not really interested. Right. And then I went to my priest when this happened to me. And do you know what he told me? It was one of the pastors there. And he said, there's just no hope. They don't come back. And I mean, talk about strangulation. I almost told him to F you. I get away from me, because I didn't believe him, and I didn't want to believe him, because I had hope, and you weren't going to kill it.
Woo! So this has been one of our more remarkably powerful, interesting sessions, don't you think, kids? This has been wonderful. So I have to find some more controversial videos to send out.
And Barry, if I could say, I truly believe Diane thinks the same thing as we all do. It was just, how you feel in that moment when you hear that for the first time.
And it was also the way he presented it, because I don't disagree with Torah values by any means. It was just the way he said it made me think, wait a minute, there's no woman in this presentation. There's only the guy. So
he's a man. And one more thing, Barry, can I add something really interesting? I have a tendency when I see people out in public, like an Italian guy or a man like the rabbi, and I hear him speaking and making statements of what he thinks and feels, kind of like how Donald Trump is doing right now. Some people hate that. And I am like, finally, men are popping up. And whether we agree with them or not agree with them, there are people making strong statements about what they think about how men should behave, how women should behave. Okay, right or wrong, I think it's wonderful. And I will walk up to someone and say, did you just say that? You are a man, and I am so grateful that you're here. I will say that.
Woo! Thank you. So, Maura, I'm going to suggest something. Please reach out to that nice man that you met in Mexico. I hope you have his number.
Yeah, of course, we always keep in touch with him. And
stay in touch with him, and we should send him a copy of this recording. and, and to say,
You know what? I will do that because he so much wants to be married, but he's looking for a soulmate. He is looking for someone that will appreciate him, and he knows what he needs. And he could be totally deflated with the wrong woman, and he could become 100 times even what he is. And he's a great man already, and he knows this with the right woman.
is he a good basketball player?
He's a better coach than a basketball player.
Oh, even better. Okay.
So there's a few other thoughts that came to mind with all of this. Imagine a guy who comes on, spurred so much conversation. We spoke about the man who wants to present or give the lifestyle he wants to be appreciated. The word that came to me for the woman, where you can kind of create this environment where it works well, was honor. If the man wants to be appreciated or respected, the woman, to make things equal in a way that a woman would appreciate it, would be that she is the honored one. I don't know why that word kept coming to mind. I don't need for Jimmy to tell me how great I am. I don't need it. I don't know why. I'm not that type. But I'll tell you, if I were dishonored, that would just really do something. So that's where maybe the delicate balance between a man and a woman works its way out. That was the first thing. The second thought that came to mind, and I think, Lori, you brought it out the best or the clearest, is men. I forgot the word you used. It was like men that have been made too feminized, which is exactly what's happened in our culture. So I can't say it, Lori. Can't say it, but I know what you mean.
Pussification. It's a made-up word, but it's funny.
Over the past,
did you make it up?
I did not make it up.
You don't know what it means.
I never heard it.
It's a funny word.
I know. I'm just, remember I told you I was voted best dignified. It can't come out of my mouth, but you had the right word. Men have been, the power and the presence and the masculinity of a man has been so eroded over the past, 2 generations? It is so unfortunate because it causes everything to go out of balance. And so that was one of the other things that hit me. Another thing that I wanted to bring out. Barry, you were talking about the role of a rabbi who could give advice that a man could be, let's say, accountable to. Because we've had men be
effeminate, yes,
are feminized, we don't see men standing up and being good quality men. But I will tell you, whether it was in business environments or even basketball, Jimmy has told me a couple of times, whether it was work, people wanted to be entertained at nudie places, and my husband would say, well, I think let's call up my wife and see what she thinks about our going out there tonight. It was his way of causing another guy to say, what am I doing? And I'll tell you, he's been in other places because, he travels, globally. Even with basketball, he's been in a situation once where one guy said to him, hey, Jimmy, would you cover for me while I go with so-and-so? And he said, you're not asking me that question. And you know what happened? It made that man accountable. He didn't go anywhere that night. This is something men need to do.
Yes.
And so to that degree, for them to present the role as being the husband, the head of the household, the strong one, the stalwart, we don't affirm it, we don't make a place for it, and we don't applaud it the way we should. And when we do, men are better men, and they honor their women a little better. Diane, you look like you don't agree.
But it isn't just masculine stuff that they need to reaffirm, but it's the basic values of what marriage is and what relationships are, whether it's with a wife or with a friend. I mean, friends don't let friends step out on their wives, as you showed. And that's the thing. We are now afraid to affirm what used to be basic values and are biblical. They happen to be biblical, and the Bible's not that popular anymore, unfortunately, but they're the basic values that we were raised with. And if we don't affirm them and illustrate them, then nobody's going to see them, and they're going to continue to go out of favor and downhill. And oh, gee, it's considered old fashioned. I mean, the more you see on TikTok, the more which I don't subscribe to TikTok, but I read about it, and the more of that stuff you absorb, the more your basic values get undermined, I believe, anyway.
You're right. And that's where the marriages become so brittle and so easy to break and easy to walk away from.
Amen.
We are able to talk about the other A word. So you can be an a-hole, you can be appreciated, or I love this now, the best is to be accountable. You're right. That was two great stories, Maura. To be able to say, I like that. Well, let me call my wife and see what she thinks.
He's got a good sense of humor, but
You got a good husband.
he made his point, though.
You see, part of it is the following. It gets people's attention, another A word, and even more so, it puts a little bit, just takes the pressure off by giving some levity. Because wait, you're going to call your wife, you're going to call your mother. Okay, and now let's pause for a second. Let's think this through. Yeah, maybe it's not the best. Okay. That's oftentimes what people need. We're all like this. We tend to react rather than respond. So I was taught this, interestingly enough, his name was Mr. Campbell. He was also a wrestling coach. So Mr. Campbell was one who taught us the difference between reacting and responding. And it worked well in wrestling, by the way, because when somebody does something in a particular move, so you want to get to the point where you don't even have to think, you know how to respond to their moves, how to block. There's certain, like in chess, certain things have. If you react, you're using your emotions. If you respond, and he said, it can be 1/10 of a second. If you respond, you actually are thinking. And when you start thinking, you have the opportunity, it doesn't always work, he says, but have the opportunity to do something different, which would probably be better. And that's, I think, what you mentioned here, Diane, about the idea, not the idea, of values. And there's a great quote from Albert Schweitzer, who I read when I was growing up as a kid. They don't read that anymore. Anyway, Albert Schweitzer was a great doctor who went into the Congo as a young man and brought medicine to that part of the world for 40, 50 years. And he said, example is not the main thing in influencing others. It's the only thing. Example. So if we want values, if we want things that other people would be cognizant of and talk about and say, really, look at that. Okay, we model. We are the models. If we want something to happen, it's on us. And again, that's part of what I think in the micro is the marriage. When my wife tells me that she appreciates me, and whatever it is, whether it's verbally or not, it makes all the difference in the world. And you're right, honor, respect, these are necessary ingredients to making things not just work over a long period of time, but get better. You want to have, when you plant those first vines and you nurture them and cultivate them, and you see over the course of number of years, 5, 10, 20, 30, whatever it is, if they're producing grapes, and you can pick the grapes and eat them, you can squeeze the grapes and make juice and wine, and it's just so much. It doesn't happen the first week or month or year that you plant the vineyard. It takes time. And then when you do it, it can last for generations. And it just keeps bringing forth more joy. Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm going to say, and I have to say it, how much I appreciate each one of you, your insight, your thoughts, your delightful smiles. Those of you who are not watching this, you're missing something. If you're only listening, it's great too. Again, share this with at least 5 people, and we'll have, God willing, 100,000 people eventually being listening on a regular basis. Follow us on Spotify and Apple, and tell everybody, Marriage with Joy is one of the greatest podcasts you could ever experience. How do you like that? And that's not hyperbole. That is plain fact. So again, wonderful Diane Medved, and one fabulous Maura Sweeney, delightful Lori McDermott, and your humble host, Barry Shore. A prayer from all of us and a blessing. That is, go forth, live exuberantly, Spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. Go mad. Go make a difference. Are we ready, kids, for a group hug? Remember what HUG stands for: heartfelt, unlimited giving. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Best wishes. Bye. Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running.